Good morning, everyone, and today we will be going over my research for the stock SEAH, which is a SPAC or Special Purpose Acquisition Company, merging with the sports betting and online gambling company Super Group, which is the parent company for the brands Betway and Spin. This video is going to be relatively quick and straight to the point, so first off, I'm going to go through all of the notes that I have on this company, and then after that, I will go more in depth on each point that I have in my notes. And actually, before I go over my notes, I want to mention some key takeaways for the company Super Group. The first key takeaway is that Super Group is a European-based company and it operates in 23 countries currently, and it plans to expand into the US market in the next few years. The second key takeaway is that the online betting industry is projected to double by 2024, and of course, the US is expected to be the largest market. The third key takeaway is that the online betting business model is basically spending money to acquire customers and then keeping those customers in your system or your betting environment. Your profits from that specific customer are calculated by subtracting the acquisition cost of that customer from the revenue that they generate over the time that they bet with your company. And the fourth key takeaway is that Super Group is very unlikely to become a market leader in the US, as they have competition like DraftKings and FanDuel. But that does not mean in any way that Super Group is a bad investment. So keep those main takeaways in the back of your mind, because I'm going to keep coming back to them as we progress throughout this video. Alright, so as you can see, I have my notes pulled up on screen here, so I'm going to run through my notes really quick and then I will go back and go through each note more in depth. So, skip over the investor presentation for now, but my first note is acquisition of Digital Gaming Corp online casino with access to 10 US states right now, including Pennsylvania and New Jersey. DGC deal would allow Super Group to operate in the US, which it is not currently able to do. DGC would become the holding company for Super Group's brands Betway and Spin. It's expanding into the US. It has a 1.177 billion 2020 revenue, EBITDA positive, pro forma implied EV of 4.64 billion or 13.3 times 2021 estimated EBITDA, or 2.9 times 2021 estimated revenue, which is a pretty low multiple. Betway has a partnership with the NHL. Betway and Spin took a massive $42 billion worth of wagers from March 2020 to March 2021, when many were forced to stay home during the COVID-19 pandemic. Compare that with US-only sportsbooks like FanDuel, which only had its first $1 million month in January of 2021. It's an online-only business, no bricks and mortar. Super Group has legal authorization to operate in 23 countries across Europe, Africa, and the Americas, and the company told MarketWatch it is already profitable, which we've seen now in the investor presentation. They have an advantage because they are in many different markets all across the world. They do not have all their eggs in one basket, and that basket being the US. They will be debt-free with $200 million cash on their balance sheet after the deal closes. Betway currently has more than 60 brand partnerships with many teams, leagues, and sport personalities across the globe. These include some of the world's leading sports franchises, such as the Chicago Bulls, Golden State Warriors, Brooklyn Nets, and LA Clippers, English Premier League football team West Ham United, and Ninjas in Pajamas, the esports team. Partnership with the Nordea Open, a clay court tennis tournament, which is one of the oldest and most well-attended sporting events in Sweden. RSI, which is one of their competitors, is currently trading around 8 times 2021 estimated revenue, which is more than Sports Group's 2.9 times 2021 revenue. And RSI used to be trading much higher. DraftKings is currently trading around 20 times 2021 estimated revenue, which does kind of make sense because DraftKings is expected to have a lot of growth pretty soon, but that is a lot more than 2.9 times 2021 revenue. Now, another thing I did find is Super Group got a warning and a penalty of about $600,000 US in 2019 for offering repeated bonuses to Swedish players. And I'll go into this more in depth after I finish going through these notes. Betway has launched Olympic themed sports challenges, which is pretty cool. Industry is expected to double by 2024, and US is expected to be the largest market, which I obviously said at the beginning of this video. Alright, but now that I've gone through these notes briefly, I'll go back and go into a few of these notes more in depth. Now, the first thing I'll talk about is the acquisition of Digital Gaming Corp, which will allow them to get their foot through the door in the US market. And this is a big deal because the 10 states they have access to through this deal include Pennsylvania and New Jersey, which are some of the bigger states that allow gambling right now. And this is huge because not only are they trading at a discount compared to their competitors, but they are also expanding into the US right now, which is expected to be the largest online betting market in the next few years. And they also are in many other markets right now. As we saw in one of our key takeaways at the beginning of this video, they operate in 23 different countries already, which is crazy. Alright, they had 1.177 billion 2020 revenue, and that is pretty crazy considering DraftKings had, if we go to DraftKings 2020 revenue, they only had $644 million in 2020 revenue, which already means that they're ahead of DraftKings, which does mean that they probably will not have a crazy amount of growth in the next few years. But I think this means that it is slightly a safer play than something like DraftKings, which has a lot of growth but doesn't have as big as a foundation as Super Group does. They are now EBITDA positive, so they are making money. They have a pro forma implied EV of 4.64 billion, which basically means their market cap should be around 4.64 billion after the SPAC merger is complete, which gives them a 2.9 times 2021 estimated revenue, which is pretty low considering RSI is trading at an 8 times 2021 revenue and DraftKings is trading around 20 times 2021 revenue. Betway has a partnership with the NHL, and this basically means that Betway is now the betting partner for the NHL. So if you want to bet on NHL games, you go through Betway, and this partnership will also get Betway a ton of brand exposure because the people watching NHL games will see Betway as their betting partner. Betway and Spin took in $42 billion worth of wages from March 2020 to March 2021. That's $42 billion in wages in 1 year, which is insane. FanDuel had its first $1 million month in January 2021, which basically means if they stay on this path roughly, they'll have like $15 to $20 million in wagers in 1 year, whereas Super Group had $42 billion. Which is just insane, and it goes to show how Super Group has a massive foundation compared to most of their competitors because they are already active in 23 other countries, and they don't rely on one market, which is the US. Like, they're trying to enter into the US, and I am sure they will be very successful and it'll bring them a lot of growth, but even if it doesn't, they still have 23 different markets that they can expand and grow in. They are an online only business, no bricks and mortar, and the CEO actually talks about this a lot and says how efficient it makes the business because they're all online and they are active 24/7. So people can bet on Betway or they can gamble on Spin 24/7, and it just gives them a huge advantage over other brands that are bricks and mortar brands. Like we've said before, Super Group has legal authorization to operate in 23 countries across Europe, Africa, and the Americas, and the company told MarketWatch it is already profitable, which we do know it is already profitable now. With this merger with SEAH, they will be debt-free and they will have $200 million in cash on their balance sheet. And they will be profitable, which is crazy because they'll have a ton of cash, available if they need it, and they will be bringing in more cash as they progress. And in these 23 countries that they are currently active in, they have over 60 brand partnerships with teams, leagues, and sports personalities across the globe. These brand partnerships bring in a ton of brand recognition for Betway and Spin, which is great for the business because it brings on more customers. They have a partnership with the upcoming Nordea Open, which is one of the oldest, most well-known sporting events in Sweden, and it is a clay court tennis tournament. And again, this will bring in a ton of brand recognition for Betway and probably bring on a bunch of new customers too, because it is one of the most well-attended sporting events in Sweden. And again, Super Group is trading at a discount to RSI and DraftKings. And again, they probably will not have as much growth as RSI and DraftKings in the future. Now, I did find some negative news on Super Group, and that is that they got a warning and a penalty of 600,000 USD in 2019 for offering repeated bonuses to Swedish players. Now, the reason they got this fine is because they offered repeated bonuses to Swedish players, which is actually illegal under the Swedish betting laws. Now, I have not heard the CEO or anyone else in the company really talk about this, but this is a bit of a red flag. $600,000 really is not that much. It's not really gonna affect the business that much, considering they took in $42 billion worth of wagers from March 2020 to March 2021. But it is obviously something to be aware of, and I am assuming that this was simply a learning experience. I am guessing, considering they're in so many different markets, it's probably hard to keep track of all those different laws that they have to adhere by. And I'm assuming it was just a mistake, and I'm hoping they've learned from this mistake. And I honestly do not see it as a massive red flag, but it is something to keep in mind for sure. Betway launches Olympic-themed esports challenges. This, again, will give them a ton of brand recognition. I really like seeing Betway doing stuff like this because it shows that they are looking for brand recognition, looking for new customers, and looking for growth. And this last note, the industry is expected to double by 2024, and the US is expected to be the largest market. Now, this is one of the key takeaways I went over at the beginning of the video, but basically this is another reason why I am so interested in Super Group, because it is in a rapidly growing industry, and it is entering into a market that is expected to see the most growth throughout the next few years. And they are unlike DraftKings and FanDuel, where they just have exposure to US markets, which yes, are expected to get a lot of growth, but they also have a massive foundation in 23 other countries, and those 23 other countries are still expected to see 100% growth by 2024, which I think is great, and I think it is really good to have a company that has diversification like this, because while the US is expected to be the largest market, there is a chance that that doesn't end up happening. Alright, so now that I've gone over all of my notes on SEAH and Super Group, I'm going to talk about some of the possible cons that we could see with this investment. Now, the first possible con we could see with investing in a sports betting and online gambling company is that online betting and gambling is a very regulated industry. It is taking a good amount of time for online betting and online gambling to be approved in every single state, but we are getting there. And there definitely are people who are against legalizing online sports betting in all states because it is seen as an unethical business practice. But that does not change the fact that online gambling and online sports betting is a very lucrative business. And as states start to see how many tax dollars online gambling and online betting can bring in, I think that most states will have no other choice than to legalize online betting and online gambling, because if they don't, they're just missing out on a ton of tax dollars. And Will Hershey, who runs an online sports betting and gambling ETF, brings up this point a lot. So even though online sports betting and online gambling is a very regulated industry, I believe that we will in fact see most states start to legalize it in the US in the coming years. But I could be wrong. Now, another negative to this investment is gambling and betting addiction does exist. And there was actually an incident that happened that included Betway where an online gambling addict stole $1.3 million somehow, and it betted on a ton of different stuff using Betway and a few different other online sports betting programs. Now, this is a very unfortunate situation, and there is definitely a possibility that something like this could happen again in the future, but Betway has made it very clear that they are very aware of gambling addictions and betting addictions, and they donate a large amount to certain charities that help with betting addictions and gambling addictions, and hopefully we will end up seeing more effort to put a stop to gambling addictions in the future as this industry expands. Another con with this investment is we have to worry about competitors, as Super Group does have a lot of competitors in the sports betting and online gambling space. However, the CEO of Super Group and the CEO of SEAH, the SPAC that is merging with Super Group, have both emphasized that their goal moving forward is not to be a market leader in the US, and not even a market leader in all of the markets that they have exposure to. Their business model simply relies on focusing on multiple different markets and trying to have a significant piece of each market, and that does not mean being a market leader. They have over 3,500 employees that specifically focus on marketing in each different market, and they have emphasized that they see each state in the US as a different market, and they will try to capitalize as much as they can on each and every one of those markets. And over time, they have proven to see success with this business model because they have expanded into multiple different markets over the past 20 years, as they now operate in 23 different countries, and they have been successful in doing this. So I honestly have no doubt that they will also be successful in the US markets, even though they probably will not be a market leader. So that is pretty much all of my research on SEAH, and now I'm just going to talk about what my plan is for investing in SEAH and Super Group moving forwards. I would like to emphasize that I am in no way a financial advisor, and just because I'm investing in SEAH does not mean you should invest as well. My risk tolerance is completely different than yours, so just make sure you do your own research and do not do what I do. So basically, the merger between SEAH and Super Group is expected to close in the second half of 2021. So basically sometime in the next 6 months. Now, I do not expect the stock to move much until that merger is closer to actually being closed. So as of now, my plan for this investment is to dollar cost average into shares from now until the stock starts actually moving closer to the merger date. It's a pretty simple plan, but I think as time goes on, people are going to start knowing more about SEAH and Super Group, and as more people do their research and start to know about SEAH and Super Group, I think the stock will get some traction, so I might end up buying more in the near future rather than waiting until it's too late. But again, make sure to do your own research on this investment and come up with your own investment strategy that suits you. Alright guys, that is about it for this video on SEAH and Super Group. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and just as a reminder, I will be doing a lot more videos like this in the future on different companies and different stocks. So if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so that you are updated whenever I drop a new video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.